If you haven't seen the previous parts yet, you will find their link in the description. Check out now. Let's start. Seung-yoon replies to Jaehyun by saying that she doesn't think of guild members as money. Jaehyun then asks her if Jaehyun would think the same. To this, Seung-yoon says that there are some things money can't buy. Jaehyun replies that she didn't think Seung-yoon would take the offer anyway and says she was being polite by coming here to ask. Seung-yoon says what Jaehyun did was not polite but unpleasant. After this, Jaehyun says she's going to leave as it's getting late and also because she knows Seung-yoon doesn't want to talk to her for too long. Seung-yoon replies that she's not dull after all. To that, Jaehyun says that's how a merchant should be and leaves. The next day at Millie's, a physical capability test is conducted and On Hoyeon beats Jaehyun by 2 points and comes in first place. Seeing this, Jaehyun sighs, thinking that he's still not good enough to compete against a martial arts genius. He thinks that second place is not bad and there's no hurry to improve now, but he's not where he wants to be right now. He then notices Yoojung and Seo and giving him weird looks. He goes up to them and Yoojung asks frustratedly how a magician class could take second place in a physical capability test. Jaehyun tries to tell her that it's because he was warrior class at first. He then advises her that she just shouldn't focus only on magic and asks her if she hasn't heard of the saying that strength powers the nation. Upon hearing this, Yoojung turns angry and says she would beat his face one day. Watching this, instructor Kim Seok-gi also thinks to himself that Jaehyun is a dangerous guy like Yeon had told him. He wonders how Jaehyun is able to do it because that's not the kind of strength a magician class should have. Later, a second physical capability test called the R-Room Evasion Test takes place. Jaehyun remembers this test from before his regression. It was a test for students to test the extent of their abilities and hit the wall of their limitations. Kim Seok explains how the test takes place. He says that this is where the advanced technology of Millie's is stored called the R-Test Room. It's where the evasion test would take place. The R battle measurement system is in front of students, made to better their abilities in battles through virtual reality. Only the evasion skills of students would be tested, but higher points would be given for defeating monsters. Jaehyun thinks this is true as raiders hunt monsters and discover equipments, potions, and artifacts. A raider who cannot fight is useless. The instructor then hands out earpieces to the students. Yoojung asks what it is and Jaehyun explains that it's a receiver device which supports the battle system displaying virtual reality. Kim Seok comments that Jaehyun is well informed and Jaehyun agrees to his statement. The device displays virtual reality by stimulating the brain to make it feel as if the monsters displayed through the projector are real. The R battle system overlays 3D images into reality using projectors on drones, making the monsters look real. The point of the device is safety. As the monsters are fake, there's no risk of being hurt. But the simulation from the receiver recreates a fifth of the enemy's attack damage. This is just to plant a bit of anxiety in the students so they do well in actual dungeons. Kim Seok continues to explain that the R system has levels from 1 to 100, but today, they would only go up to level 10. The test would be done with groups of 4 and the instructor names the groups. Jaehyun finds himself in a group with 2 magician class and 2 martial arts. Jaehyun notes it's a nice balance. Lee Soo-hyuk asks Jaehyun how he was able to win first place in the student hunt despite being a magician. Saying that there might be a special reason for that, he then asks Jaehyun to teach him too. Jaehyun asks him what if he doesn't have a special reason. Soo-hyuk says that he would find out even if he has to use force. Then Jaehyun asks him why he didn't say that he wants to fight him from the start. Soo-hyuk replies that he's quick to catch on. Jaehyun and Soo-hyuk's teammates worry that their team might not do well as both of them are already arguing despite being on the same team. She tries to soothe the situation by talking to them, but the group is immediately called to the field. The R evasion test begins and VR skeleton soldiers appear. Soo-hyuk decides to back away for now, but Jaehyun runs towards the skeleton soldier. The girls try to warn him that it's dangerous, but he doesn't listen. Soo-hyuk asks what a magician is going to do by going into combat. Jaehyun didn't think he'd still get these kind of provocations. Left with no choice, Jaehyun decides to show him his abilities. Jaehyun skillfully casts his powers and takes on the monster, killing it. Then, more monsters appear. Jaehyun kicks them and activates Mono Weapon skill. The Mono Weapon is a special skill that regular magicians can't use. This skill increases physical damage and despite being a skill for magicians, it's useless. However, for Jaehyun it's different. Jaehyun has now cleared the first level of the R evasion test. He's also been given reward points. The level 2 begins, and this time, Jaehyun faces a Draugr. He says to the Draugr that it's been a long time and eventually, Jaehyun clears up to level 10 without any flaws. He is also congratulated for setting a record. Soo-hyuk is in disbelief at what he's seeing. Jaehyun thinks to himself that his body feels lighter after changing his combat method to what Seung-yoon taught him. Jaehyun feels satisfied but wonders why she's so excited whenever she's teaching him. It's kinda scary to Jaehyun, but what she teaches him is great so he doesn't mind. Soo-hyuk comes up to him and demands to know what he did. He asks if he really wants him to believe that a magician stepped up into combat and swept up all the enemies by himself. Soo-hyuk claims it's impossible unless Yi-hyun cheated, saying that what he saw is all there is to it. Yi-hyun walks away. Soo-hyuk still doesn't believe him, so Yi-hyun asks him if he wants to check it for himself since he's so curious. They're both interrupted by the instructor, who asks them what the issue is. Soo-hyuk is angry that the instructor stopped him but tells Yi-hyun that he would fight him at the Millie's Academy festival. Yi-hyun tells him he has plans on that day. Later, Soo-hyuk is in bed, pondering why Yi-hyun thinks of him as a rival too. He thinks that this isn't the time to be reminiscing and gets up to go to the training center because he doesn't want to disappoint Yi-hyun. Later, Yeon asks the instructor for the physical capability test results. Instructor Kim Seok tells Yeon that Yi-hyun scored the highest. Yeon orders Kim Seok to continue to send reports on Yi-hyun's grades and what he does. He also tells him to let him know if Yi-hyun does anything strange. Yi-hyun has cleared level 27 of the R evasion test. In his current state, level 27 is his limit. At this limit, he could probably clear 6 degrees Celsius rank raiders with some difficulty. This means that Yi-hyun's current level is the same as his, so the next dungeon will probably be mock dungeon practice. He makes a note to practice in advance. Yi-hyun remembers the mock dungeon incident that happened before he regressed. It was an incident that cost many students' lives and was remembered as a tragedy. Yi-hyun's team was also caught in the middle of that tragic event, but in the end, he was the only one of the team to make it out alive. He was reprimanded and told he should have died instead, but he couldn't quit Millie's. He didn't want to disappoint those who believed in him. The following day at school, Yoo-jung and In are nervous about the mock dungeon practice happening the next day. He assures them that it's normal to feel that way for going to a dungeon for the first time. Yoo-jung asks him if it's not his first time either and if he goes for walks in dungeons. Yi-hyun says no, but he has seen monsters before, like the one standing beside him now. Yoo-jung hits him and then Yi-hyun gives them potions and asks them to take it if they're worried. He says he bought it when he was buying one for himself and asks them to not be stingy while using it. Yi-hyun thinks how he escaped last time by luck, but this time, he would do it with his own abilities. It's the day of the mock dungeon practice and Yi-hyun prepares beforehand by warming up, because no matter how good a magician one may be, if they suddenly use high-level magic, they might suffer from mana rebound. And if the magic rebounds, it can harm the user. If he could coalesce the magic power in his core beforehand, he could use it to strengthen his body or magic. Yi-hyun receives a quest stating that he has succeeded in returning to the point he most desires. So after several turning points, he must now choose to make the same decision or a different one. That choice could kill people or save them. He's given 11 hours to complete this quest. Yi-hyun thinks that this is weird, but the Nornir system's definitely hoping for him to get stronger. He wonders what their intention is. During the mock practice dungeon, the teacher Kim Ji-yeon assures the students that only low-level monsters that the students will be able to take on will show up. But Yi-hyun knows that it's all just Yeon's trap is mixed with those low-level demons or a few boss-level monsters. It wouldn't be difficult for Yi-hyun to take care of, but he doesn't intend to act how Yeon wants him to. However, in this practice, Yeon would reveal a small weakness. That weakness might be Yi-hyun's chance to kill him. Teams are made by drawing lots and Yi-hyun's group consists of Seona and 2 martial arts students, Kim Jina and Park Seongwoo. Yi-hyun is relieved that there's someone he can talk to comfortably, and he's also certain of her abilities, so it won't be a problem to make strategies. After a bit of team planning, the groups head to their designated dungeons. Yi-hyun suddenly has a vision where the 2 martial arts students try to take on the boss monster and ask Yi-hyun to run away. Yi-hyun wonders what the system meant by asking him to make a choice. He realizes now that he's been given the choice. Yi-hyun realizes how the Nornir system was after this from the start. He introduces himself and Seona to his teammates, while saying that Ina is quiet around people, so he would talk on her behalf. Seongwoo says that they can all get to know each other better as they travel together. Jina comforts Seona by telling her that they aren't shy, so she doesn't need to worry about it. Yi-hyun notes how they're both the same as before he regressed. Then, they discuss strategies and decide that Yi-hyun would be the leader. Yi-hyun advises his team that they must not falter no matter what happens in the dungeon, especially the martial arts raider who stands in the front. If that person falters, the whole party would be wiped out. Seongwoo says that Yi-hyun's planning is impeccable and it's as expected of a student hunt first place winner. Kim Yoo-jung is on Hoyeon's team, so Yi-hyun feels relieved knowing that Yoo-jung will be safe. Yoo-jung's team find themselves in a mine dungeon and they suddenly hear something approaching. They brace themselves and see some monsters surround them. Hoyeon says that they might be weak, but it'd be tough to beat a group of them. Yoo-jung begins to incant and activates Flash Bomb skill, which weakens them. Then, an Air Blast skill is activated, which finally kills the monsters. Everyone seems fine except one student. The group assumes he's been poisoned by the Koblad. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eyes, Yoo-jung spots a boss monster towering over them. They realize that it's not poison but an incredible amount of magic power. Hoyin is shocked that there's a Koblad Lord here. Meanwhile, Yihan's group is in another dungeon, and Gina praises Yihan for killing all the monsters by himself. Yihan modestly says that it was nothing. Siona thinks to herself that it wasn't nothing, but at this rate, they would be able to clear the dungeon without anyone getting hurt. Yihan asks Siona if she still feels nervous around others. She agrees with him. Yihan thinks about how even before he regressed, he never saw her speak much. They enter another portion of the dungeon, but it seems different from what Yihan remembers, so he realizes that it must be Yaen's work. Yihan's existence has become a huge variable to Yaen. Yihan senses something and alerts the group. He tells them that this is nothing like they've faced before, so they should be careful. A Koblad Lord appears before them and they're shocked to see a boss monster. They use magic armor and activate Provoke a Kill. The monster attacks Seongwoo, who calls out to Yihan for help. Yihan immediately unleashes his power on the monster, but the Koblad Lord has regeneration abilities. Yihan says that this is too much. The system informs him that the perpetrator behind the Kobold Lord is Odin's crows. Yihan also receives a quest to hunt down every single crow, for which he would receive a blank card as a reward, and if he wasn't able to do so, the penalty would be death. The instructor Kim Jeon watches what's happening in the dungeon and thinks how Yihan could be so good. She's an rank magician too, but she can't do what he can do. Suddenly, Yujin comes running out with her team. They tell her a Koblad Lord appeared in the dungeon. Kim Jeon is shocked and cannot believe what she's hearing. People come to the students' help immediately and say that it's just light mana poisoning. Yujin worriedly asks the teacher if Yihan's group is back. The teacher says no. She calls up Yaen and informs him that there's a B-rank monster in the dungeon. She requests him to call for emergency support. Yaen tells her he would send a team, but Kim Jeon still feels anxious. Yihan now receives a message that says the being has been identified as Odin's raven. Odin uses two ravens, one named Hyujin and another named Munin, to collect all kinds of knowledge in the world to rule over Asgard. So Yihan realizes that it's Odin's followers doing. The mana he senses is at least B rank, and it regenerates too. Even though Yihan is strong, he knows it's not going to be easy to take him on. He wonders if he should run away, but that's what he did in his past life like a coward, and his life was full of constant regrets. Yihan sees this as a new opportunity and vows to fight this time, even if it's just a test. Yihan tells the others on his team to get out of the dungeon while he stops the beast. Seongwoo asks how he would be able to do it by himself. Yihan yells at him to shut up and run. He's about to take on the beast but sees Siona by his side, ready to attack. She says that she can help him. Yihan thinks that those are the eyes of someone whose mind can't be changed, so he tells her to stay and help and asks Seongwoo and Gina to go tell the instructor about the situation. They hesitate, but Yihan pleads them, so they agree and leave. Ina takes on the monster and Yihan says he would cover her back. She uses a divine sword incantation to take him down. Yihan notices the monster's body is melting. There's a limit to how much mana a body can hold. Yihan realizes that there's someone controlling the beast, someone imbuing more mana than the beast's limits. So, Yihan equips the Mistletoe Lane item to widen his vision and obtains the skill Magic Power Detection. He sees the hand controlling the mana of the boss level monster and decides to tear him apart. Meanwhile, Hyujin tells Odin that he found Mistletoe Lane, which had disappeared from the god's storage. When asked where it is, he replies that it's in Midgard with the prophesied great enemy. A girl wonders about the great enemy and Thor says that she worries too much and asks if she has a treaty with resistant Aesirs. Thor is reminded that they lost Balder in the war and what killed him was Mistletoe. Odin then asks Hyujin to go and find out if the great enemy has made contact with the half-Aesirs, and Hyujin says yes. Seok-gi meets up with Yaen, who asks him how things are. Yaen says no one seemed to notice anything yet. Yaen chuckles and says that's good to hear. He thinks how he had fortunately borrowed his strength ahead of time, and no matter how arrogant he acted, Yihan would soon fall into his hands. All of this was for Odin and Aesir. Meanwhile, Yihan is still fighting the beast, who is still not backing down. He asks Ina to cover for him and says that he needs to be clear of its attacks. Ina replies that she would try. Yihan thinks that Ina is probably already aware of Mana Rebound. Even if he did end up defeating the Koblad Lord, the chances of Ina not making it are high, and yet she still plans to help to him. In this life, Yihan had resolved to not trust anyone. After all, this world was completely unfair and cruel to the weak. But there's only one chance now, and Yihan wants to put an end to this. He activates Mana Shield skill and takes on the Koblad Lord while thinking what his friend had told him once. He had said there's nothing more miserable than dying because you couldn't trust your own companions. From here on out, Yihan vows to prove that he wasn't wrong. Ina is shocked that Yihan is using it as a movement skill. She wonders how skilled one must be with mana control for that to be possible. Yihan goes to kick the beast in the face, but it lifts up its sharp clawed leg to attack him. Yihan dodges it and grabs his sword. He takes a swing at the beast and breaks the mana thread connecting the beast to Odin's raven. The Kobold Lord falls apart and Yihan goes up to see who's behind all of this. He sees a crow-like creature in a robe and wonders what the hell Odin's goal is. He also spots a necklace lying next to the creature and wonders what the connection between Yihan and Odin is. Since the crow doesn't have a will of its own, Yihan steps on it. Siona comes up to him and says that it's not over yet as he should be careful of mana rebound. Yihan receives a message saying that corrupted mana has entered their bodies. They both cough and struggle to breathe. Then, Yihan is notified that due to the purity of the user's mana, the corrupted mana has been purged. Yihan is glad it worked, and for hunting the crow, he receives a blank card as a reward. After he's fully recovered, Yihan is given a message saying that his teammate's life is in grave danger. He sees Siona on the ground. The system then says that if she doesn't recover immediately, the designated party member will die. After getting up, Ina asks Yihan what happened. He asks her how she feels and Ina notices that her health and mana have fully recovered. She is confused as she's sure that she experienced mana rebound. So she tells Yihan she's okay and apologizes for being asleep. She notices the Kobold Lord who's dead and asks why Yihan didn't leave after defeating it. He says he was waiting for her to wake up. He then tells that he has something to say to her. She asks what it is and Yihan replies that they need to get their stories straight. However, outside the dungeon, Yujing asks Yihan's teammates why only they both made it out. She goes to fight them but is stopped by the teacher who tells her not to worry about her friends. Just then, both Yihan and Ina walk out and Yihan asks if they're fighting because of them. The teacher is beyond shocked. The inspection team had told her they'd definitely be dead. Yujing runs up to them and hugs them. While crying, she says that the instructor told her they'd be dead. Yihan asks her to let go. He sees Songwoo and Gina teary-eyed too. He thanks them for trusting him and Siona. He explains to the instructor that those two left because he asked them to and so they shouldn't be blamed or insulted. Yujing still angrily asks them how they could leave their teammates behind. Yihan says he would have done the same, remembering the past incident. Yihan then tells her not to get mad for him. She angrily retorts that she was mad for Ina. Yihan looks at the instructor thinking if she's the one that healed him. Inside the dungeon, Yihan had told Siona that he doesn't want anyone to know about this ability. She asks why he's hiding this skill, so Yihan asks if she's not curious why a Kobold Lord was here to endanger students. Yihan reveals to her that it's because of Yain. He tells her he's a piece of shit that uses students as tools, and that he's very different from the side of himself he shows to the public and media, and he also thinks it's fine for useless students to die. Siona realizes that's why Yihan's against him and hiding his ability. She then reminds Yihan about what he had told her at Yain's office the other day, about not trusting anyone including the chief. She asks him how much he knows as he knew from the beginning that Yain was a bad person. She also says that Yihan acts like he knows what's going to happen. She pleads with Yihan to tell her how he knows these things. Yihan thinks that her life would be at risk if she got any more involved. He wonders if he should use brainwashing but then remembers that she has a high magic aptitude value. Her mentality is so strong, it might not work. And it's not a good solution in the first place. So instead, he apologizes to her and says if he said anything more, it would be dangerous for her. Back outside, the instructor apologizes profusely for not being able to rescue him. Yihan says it's fine and walks away. Siona catches up to him again and asks if he could really not tell her in case something else like this happened. He says sorry and tells her that he believes she would keep the promise they made. The system informs Yihan that he has completed the quest by taking a different route from the past. As a reward, he receives Eden's golden apple. Yain tells Kim Seok that he is disappointed in him. He says he hates having a useless subordinate. The instructor says he won't disappoint him again and Yain asks him to make sure to tame Yihan in the next event before his patience runs out. After taking a shower, Yihan reminisces all that had happened that day. Before his regression, Yujing died and Hoyan didn't even reach half of his potential. For the sake of the future, Yihan decides that he must intervene. But not for Siona. She would do fine without his intervention. Yihan vows to be careful about how he interacts with her from now. He then turns on the news and thinks to find the relationship between Yain and the Aesir. Yihan knows there would be many dangerous situations in the future, so he'd have to get stronger so he could respond to any situation. He watches the presenters talking on the television. One man asks another what other kind of dungeons are there. He replies that there are themed dungeons. These would have to be approached differently than regular dungeons. He continues to say that the biggest difference between normal dungeons and these are, you can't leave themed dungeons without clearing it. Yihan remembers that these dungeons were a thing. The man says that raiders who wanted to raid themed dungeons would have to become a character of the theme and clear certain requirements. It was kind of a roleplay, and what raiders want in these dungeons are rare item rewards. An item raiders called God's Arrangement. This item is the reason raiders are desperate to clear dungeons despite their difficulty. Yihan sees this as an opportunity to get what he needs most. Yoo-jung and Seo-in are chatting over a cup of coffee. Ina apologizes to Yoo-jung for worrying her. Yoo-jung tells her it's fine and she's glad that she and Yi-hyun are okay. Then she says she was worried Yi-hyun might have been mean to her as his personality is shitty. Seo-in pauses without replying and Yoo-jung freaks out and asks if he was actually mean to her. She tells her it's not that. She also says that Yi-hyun seems to trust Yoo-jung a lot. In her mind, Ina just wishes he would trust her more. She tells Yoo-jung that maybe if he was stronger he would trust her. Yoo-jung immediately gets up and tells her they should throw out Yi-hyun and go eat something yummy instead. Grabbing Ina's arm, she says she would make her feel better. In his room, Yi-hyun holds Eden's golden apple he got as a reward. The system says it prevents aging and betters natural healing. As it's rare, Yi-hyun thinks that it might cost at least millions. A rank-themed dungeon is about to open in a theme park in Seoul. That's where Yi-hyun could obtain Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps, shoes that can increase speed. These were the shoes that Thor's servant, Th Jalfi, wore. It would help to increase dexterity stat, so a lot of martial art raiders wanted them. This would help balance out Yi-hyun's mana and endurance with dexterity. Yi-hyun then takes a bite of the apple. It tastes like any other apple to him. The golden apple starts to take effect. Yi-hyun's stamina, mana, natural healing ability, and magic aptitude increase while aging decreases. Yi-hyun goes to the theme park. To him, seeing the place after his regression seems even more tacky. The girl at the ticket counter asks him what kind of ticket he would like. He slides an ID towards her and tells her he's Min Yi-hyun, a raider from the Lotus Guild. And in a bit, a theme dungeon would open up here. Instructor Kim Ji-young goes up to a desk and asks if Yi-hyun is out right now. The receptionist asks her if there's an issue. The teacher denies it while thinking how he's already recovered from such an incident while being a new student. In her mind, she praises Yi-hyun by thinking he has guts. She then tells the woman to ask Yi-hyun to come see her when he's back and leaves. Kim Ji-young receives a call from team manager Song Jae-sok. She asks him how the investigation went and he replies that after looking into it, he found out that Yeon was behind it. He then says that the person behind the mock dungeon trial was Kim Seok-gi and he must be in a difficult position now. He asks her to keep an eye on both of them and call him if she notices anything. Before she hangs up, she tells him that she thinks Min Yi-hyun knows something. At the theme park, it is announced that it's an emergency situation. All the guests in the park are asked to leave. Yi-hyun thinks that the Lotus Guild is influential as the evacuation of the people was fast. Earlier, Seung-yoon had told him that he could mention their guild, but on one condition, which would be to prioritize his safety if things become dangerous. She tells him no teacher wants their student to be in danger and anything can happen in a dungeon. Soon, the theme dungeon called Neverland in Ruins appears. A special reward would be given for clearing 3 missions consecutively. Yi-hyun's quest is to find the 3 missions and clear them successfully. For this, he would be awarded Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps. To Yi-hyun, this seems just like he remembers it from his past life. He reminisces a scenario that took place the last time he was here. He had met Seo Ah-hyun, a theme dungeon raider. She'd told him about her skill called Cognition Accelerant. There's nothing she couldn't do if she used her brain a bit. She was a self-proclaimed genius with an IQ of 150. She was excited about her power and bragged about it but ended up being killed by those who were envious of her. And because of that, Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps went to someone else. As the dungeon is being set up, Yi-hyun thinks that it would be better for him to take them instead. From the entrance, Yi-hyun is transported to the Viking dungeon. Soon, Yi-hyun is synchronized with the character. He's playing Th Jalfi, a warrior who survived the invasion of the Vikings. Yi-hyun receives a quest which requires him to become Th Jalfi and rescue Roskva, his younger sister. Th Jalfi is the servant of the god of thunder, Thor. He's also the fastest in the 9 realms. Originally a human, he despised the Aesir because he'd lost his family to the Aesir. Yi-hyun is taken by surprise as this isn't how the story goes. He understands that it must be another conflict between the Aesir and Nornir. Suddenly, someone screams out Th Jalfi, Yi-hyun's character's name. He gets up thinking about how he stole a ship to find Roskva. Frederick, the man who gave him the idea to steal the ship, comes up to him and asks if he's okay. Yi-hyun, who's playing as Th Jalfi, says he's okay, but all of a sudden, the ship starts to tilt and rock. A bunch of goons climb onto the ship. Yi-hyun doesn't know what's happening, but he decides to hold off finding Roskva for a bit. He tells Frederick to deal with them and jumps onto the ship nearby. One of the pirates tells him that he just jumped into enemy territory when he should be hiding instead. Yi-hyun then notices a girl tied up. He has no trouble recognizing her as Seo Ah-hyun. Yi-hyun wonders what she's doing here, but he is informed that she is Roskva, Th Jalfi's younger sister. Seo Ah-hyun is a genius and a great raider to be. She considers herself to be an amazing person, but she ended up being locked here because she had gotten separated from her friends. 3 minutes before the emergency announcement, she'd told her friends she had to go to the bathroom. She'd thought that the chances of a dungeon appearing where she was 0.6%, but eventually she did end up being locked up and she curses her luck for it. She's upset and cries at first, but then decides to find a way out of this place. Hoping to see someone, she spots Yihyun walking around. He doesn't seem to be a part of the raid team, so she decides to follow him. Sighing, Yihyun realizes she got locked up here despite the announcement that was made. He's frustrated that it had to be her. The men aim for Yihyun using their arrows. Using his powers, Yihyun is able to keep the attacks at bay. Feeling optimistic, Yihyun thinks that even though she's a bitch, she would be helpful for the raid. He wouldn't be able to send her out, so it's better to use her. Yihyun punches one of the men and goes up to rest, who watch in fear. He tells them to come at him all at once as he doesn't have time. After he has defeated them all, Yihyun tells Roscoe to stop pretending to sleep. She asks him if he's Jalfi. He then bends down and punches the wall next to her. He tells her he knows what she's thinking and warns her to not try any of her funny ideas. Yihyun's first mission has been successfully completed, so they're both sent back to field. Yihyun thinks that she's a magic class raider but moves like a martial arts raider. He then asks her what kind of skill she has. Lying to him, she says that her skill allows her to be better at swordsmanship. She hopes to trick him as there aren't many middle schoolers who have skills. She thinks about how she wants to use him to her advantage. Yihyun is quick to say that he hates liars. She stammers while denying it. She lies again and says that it's called beginner swordsmanship revision. Yihyun tells her it's cognition accelerant. He explains her own skill to her, saying that it makes it feel like time slowed down and quickens the user's thoughts. After saying this, he asks her if he's wrong. Feeling flustered, Seo Ah-hyun is unable to reply. Getting up, Yihyun says he can't take her with him because she still plans to lie and use him. She immediately apologizes to him while sobbing. She begs him to not leave her behind here as she would die otherwise. Yihyun asks her how he can trust her. She says she would figure out a way. So, Yihyun asks her to write a contract instead. Soon, a contract is made. It states that Seo Ah-hyun can't act in any way that would harm Yihyun. Seo Ah-hyun must obey Yihyun's orders, and Yihyun would ensure her safety until the dungeon is cleared. Yihyun uses subordination, a brainwashing skill that would allow him to hold supremacy through contract. She agrees to sign the contract, and cuffs and chains appear on her to signify subordination. The system states that the subordination would not be broken even after the quest is cleared. At Hell's temple, Hell is told that the great enemy seems to be working hard. The glares of the Aesir gods have gotten sharp, and if she left now, they'd be upset. So Hell has been asked to be their eyes, as they'd need some time to stall before Yihyun is ready. Yihyun and Seo Ah-hyun head to the haunted house. She freaks out upon hearing the name. Yihyun asks her if she's scared. She tries to laugh it off and says what kind of middle schooler would be afraid of that. Yihyun says someone like her would be. Seo Ah-hyun is dumbfounded, and Yihyun tells her to prepare to go in. But she stops him and says she needs to do some deep breathing. The second mission takes place. Seo Ah-hyun's character is a cameraman and Yihyun is a horror streamer. Suddenly, a giant man says it's been a while since they had guests. He introduces himself as Alfred, the butler of the mansion who serves Countess Flandier. He had come to greet them as the Countess instructed him to. Yihyun's quest is to use the camera to reveal truths about the mansion and escape. Alfred invites them both in by saying that the Countess emphasized that he must serve them well. He takes them both to the dining room to eat. Yihyun notices a vase of flowers while Seo Ah-hyun admires a painting of a young girl and a dog and calls it beautiful. Alfred lets them know it's the portrait of the owner and Sean. The girl in the painting seems to be 12, so Yihyun says that the owner must really cherish her childhood to put up painting like this. Alfred's voice and personality suddenly turns dark, and he says that the Countess has a lot of very happy dreamlike memories. He then asks them both to follow him. Yihyun thinks he should be more alert. For the first mission, the system had told him the context, but not for this one. He has to figure out the secrets himself. He turns towards Seo Ah-hyun to see her frightened. He tells her she was lying when she said she wasn't scared. To this, she replies that it's only because she hasn't gotten used to this place yet. When they reach the dining room, Alfred says the Countess prepared a feast for them and asks them to dig in. Saying that he would come back when they're done, Alfred leaves. Seo Ah-hyun says it would be a bad idea to eat those. Yihyun tells her they should explore as Alfred isn't here, but Seo Ah-hyun says they should get some information from here before they leave. She activates cognition accelerant skill and studies the dining room. When she's done, she says she discovered a few things about the mansion. When asked what it is, she says the owner of the mansion is a 12-year-old kid. Yihyun asks why she thinks so, and she mentions the chair. Pulling it out, she shows him how the seat of the owner is higher than others. She also talks about the shelves in the lobby. They were all pretty low and only the lower handles were used. Yihyun agrees with her and they plan to go to another room, only to realize they've been locked inside the dining room. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, a news reporter says that a raider from the Lotus Guild and a middle schooler are in the theme dungeon, and everyone is concerned if they will make it out okay. Two men from the raider team discuss that they should go and check up on whoever is inside, as 2 hours have passed since they went to the dungeon. One of them checks his clipboard and sees that it's Min Yi-hyun. He remembers him from the goblin incident and lets his colleague know that the dungeon will be cleared. Seo Ah-hyun is terrified and says that if they're trapped here, they'd never make it out. Yi-hyun tells her to calm down and says there has to be a way out as this is a dungeon. Hearing this, she feels relieved and says there's no inescapable dungeon, and she goes away to look around the room some more. Yi-hyun thinks there's no way he could open this door with the stats he has. But Seo Ah-hyun escaped this place before Yi-hyun's regression, so he assumes that the required stamina for successfully raiding this dungeon is low, which means another variable must be involved. Seo Ah-hyun calls Yi-hyun and says there's something wrong with the camera. When he looks into the camera, he sees Alfred lying dead on the floor with his neck slashed, so they realize that the Alfred who guided them here earlier was fake. Yi-hyun is notified that they've reached 70% of Alfred's secret, the first mystery of the mansion. Yi-hyun thinks this is just the beginning. He tells her the camera shows them what they can't see. Seo Ah-hyun says that's why she's the cameraman. The camera is the key to solving the mystery. Yi-hyun tells her she's pretty good. Yi-hyun had been wondering how she made it out of the dungeon since she's so scared. He realizes that she calms down when she's thinking. Yi-hyun then tells her that assuming that the Alfred they saw was fake, the camera is either showing them the past or present. Seo Ah-hyun says this is a dungeon where they're supposed to solve the mystery of the mansion, so they wouldn't show them the future, so it must be the past. They also understand that the food isn't meant to be eaten. Suddenly, Seo Ah-hyun says she doesn't feel good. Yi-hyun had been sensing a bit of mana. It's because all this is an illusion, a magic that occasionally appears in dungeon traps. So he activates absolute calculation skill, but the activation fails as the skill is not allowed here. Meanwhile, Seo Ah-hyun is trying to look around for a device for opening a door. She says how the only thing different in the camera is Alfred being at the top of the table in the place of the food. So the key to escaping might be there. Yi-hyun turns on an on-off skill called mana detection. Using that, he senses mana from the pudding. Blocking magic is fundamentally tied to other objects or calculations. So, in order to destroy the magic, you need to either destroy the object or erase the calculation. Yi-hyun tells Seo Ah-hyun that the key is in the pudding. She goes up to the pudding and takes the key out of it. Hence, they've successfully completed the second quest. Alfred watches them through a crystal ball and says that the guests did not enjoy the meal. He says that he can't be lacking on treating guests well and says Alfred will never disappoint the Countess. Yi-hyun and Seo Ah-hyun make it out of the dining room and reach the guest bedroom. Seo Ah-hyun looks through the camera for clues. Yi-hyun tells her they should go into the room. Seo Ah-hyun is terrified, but Yi-hyun tells her they have to get out of here unless she wants to stay in this mansion forever. She agrees, without a choice. He tells her to look around and call for him if she sees anything. So they split up and Yi-hyun is looking for clues when out of the corner of his eyes, he sees a ghost of a girl. She walks towards him while pointing to Alfred, who is behind him. Yi-hyun and Seo Ah-hyun end up being locked up in a prison. Using cognition accelerant, she tries to figure out where they are. Judging by the moss and moisture, she says it seems like they're in an underground jail, and there are traces of torture throughout the place. Yi-hyun assumes there'd be a key somewhere here too. He activates a skill called Silence and proceeds to punch the entrance of the jail, causing it to break without any noise. He tells her to be quiet as it'd be bad if Alfred or anyone else found them. Just then, they hear a barking noise. A puppy jumps at Yi-hyun, who catches it. In its mouth, it holds a key. Seo Ah-hyun orders him to put the puppy down. Yi-hyun tells her it appears normal in both appearance and mana, and seeing the key in its mouth, he assumes it must have been trapped here too. Seo Ah-hyun tries to reason that the puppy could be a trap as they wouldn't give them the key so easily. The puppy grunts and looks at her angrily. Yi-hyun receives a new sub-quest. His task is to go to the 4th floor and take Flanders' diary. Along with the puppy, Yi-hyun and Seo Ah-hyun make it to the 3rd floor. She says they'd have to just look around because they don't have their camera. Yi-hyun does not reply and stays quiet. Seo Ah-hyun says he's making her anxious. She turns around to where he's looking and sees a ghost walking towards them. Seo Ah-hyun tells Yi-hyun that they don't have time to talk to ghosts and tries to pull him away, but Yi-hyun asks the ghost why she's still here and if she has any regrets related to the mansion. She shakes her head, so Yi-hyun asks if she's here to help them instead, and she nods. So Yi-hyun asks her to tell them where Flanders' room is. She points towards the room. Yi-hyun thanks her and says that he would help her move to the afterlife if he had the chance. Outside the dungeon, Sung-yi is talking to a man from the raider team. He'd told him that the Lotus Guild would take responsibility for everything related to this theme dungeon. In return, Sung-yi asks for the Raider Association to not release any information about Yi-hyun on Seung-yoon's request. The man says it's hard to understand why the Lotus Guild would go to such lengths for a Millie's Academy student. Sung-yi tells he cannot reveal the reasons. The man then says that he has nothing to lose from this offer, so he'd do as he said. In the dungeon, Yi-hyun and Seo Ah-hyun enter Flandier's room after Yi-hyun has managed to defeat living armors, which are C-rank monsters. As soon as they enter the room, Yi-hyun picks up a book from the desk. He reads what Flandier has written on it. She's written that her parents went to the city to buy a doll for her, but then she'd received a letter that they were killed by thieves. She felt lonely until a girl was caught stealing flowers from their garden. She was about her age and looked like her doll, so she took a liking to her and asked her to live with her in the mansion. She had no name, so Flandier named her Sally. Flandier is happy to have a friend. Soon, Alfred leaves the mansion without a word, and Sally had told her that he must have gone to the next town in a hurry. A few days later, Flandier has mentioned in her diary that Alfred was back, but he seemed different and Sally seems to be hiding something too. Then she writes that Alfred and Sally are knocking on her door and she's sure that they want to kill her. After reading it, Yi-hyun closes the diary and the restrictions come undone. The restrictions on skill use are no longer in effect. Yi-hyun realizes Flandier had been murdered. It was probably the doing of the monster that had stolen the mansion. It was probably a doppelganger. Yi-hyun has discovered Alfred's secret and completed the sub-quest. The system says that the quests have been finished and he needs to safely escape the mansion now. Trying to escape from the mansion, Yi-hyun faces the monster behind it all. He tells the monster that it was finally showing its real self after acting fake. The beast tells him he's quick to catch on for a human. Yi-hyun tells it that he's just smart and that it wasn't even difficult. He then says that maybe it's him that's stupid. The beast gets angry for being insulted, and before it can do any damage to Yi-hyun, he uses his skills and power to defend himself. The doppelganger is a B-rank beast. It's dangerous because it can copy others' skills and appearance, but when considering its combat skills, it's a C-rank monster. It tells Yi-hyun that it's gonna consume him, but Yi-hyun's lightning chain skill binds the beast and prevents it from doing so. Yi-hyun asks how it feels to be played after playing others for a long time. As the beast deteriorates, it thinks it wants to be human too before exploding. After this, Yi-hyun sees Flandier waving goodbye to him, and along with the puppy, he leaves the mansion. The system informs him that he's cleared all the missions and that he'd soon be transported to the real world. He ends up on a bench next to Seo Ah-hyun. She tells him he should have said something if he knew the puppy was her. Yi-hyun tells her to be glad that she made it out alive, and instead of whining, they should head to the next destination. She says that should take a break instead. Yi-hyun retorts by saying that she didn't do anything ever since they were in that underground jail. Seo Ah-hyun says she has mental fatigue. Yi-hyun tells her it'll go away if she moves around. Through subordination, he orders her to walk. Left with no choice, she walks around until they reach a parade. Bruin, the host of the show, welcomes them. He congratulates them both for completing 2 missions. Yi-hyun directly asks him what the last mission is like. Bruin says the last mission is tag. He points to a gate behind him and says they both would have to run from beasts that come out of it and reach the final destination. Yi-hyun says that can't be all there is to it. Bruin says he's clever. He says that in this game of tag, beasts would appear depending on the number of challengers and how strong they are. Yi-hyun thinks this is bad as there'd be stronger beasts than earlier, considering his skills, and he'd also have to fight while protecting Seo Ah-hyun. Bruin says he needs to get an understanding for their skills. A few moments later, he congratulates them and says S rank. While he's busy being impressed over how he's never met anyone with such high ranks, Yi-hyun is shocked and asks how it makes sense. Bruin wishes them luck, and Yi-hyun receives the final quest, which is to run away from Surtur to the final destination or defeat him. The rewards for this would be Th Jalfi's Thunder Steps. Yi-hyun notices that 3 members have been mentioned and thinks something's wrong. Surtur is a being whose purpose is to engulf the whole world in flames. The sword of flames in his hand is said to be hot enough to burn the world to ashes in a matter of a few hours. Yi-hyun and Seo Ah-hyun look up at Surtur in disbelief. Frightened, she asks how they're supposed to run away from it. He tells her he's thinking, but for now, she'd have to shut up and run if she didn't want to die. A black cat watches this scenario and thinks that this may be its fault, so it should try to help them. Hel tells the cat that it's cruel and that it has no intention of helping them. She asks the cat to leave them be, as she wants to see how Yi-hyun makes it out of this one. Surtur approaches them, and Yi-hyun thinks it's wiser to avoid fighting with him directly and to just find the goal. Seo Ah-hyun spots an arrow with the word goal written on it. She tells him that's the destination, but Yi-hyun asks her to hold on for a bit and activates haste skill. Grabbing her hand, he dashes away from Surtur. Yi-hyun decides that he would distract Surtur and use Seo Ah-hyun to get to the goal. Surtur asks which fool has summoned him while hot flames engulf around him. Yi-hyun tells Seo Ah-hyun that they should split up and she should run to the merry-go-round while he would stay and distract Surtur. He calls to Surtur, and before Surtur's flames land on him, Yeon shoots up to the top of a tower. Yeon asks Surtur how he'd catch him when he's so slow. Seo Ah-hyun has almost reached the destination, but Surtur destroys it with burning flames. Yeon and Seo Ah-hyun watch in shock as the system alerts that the goal has been destroyed and that the quest's condition has been changed to impossible. Surtur calls Yeon an ignorant fool for thinking that he was a match for him. So, Yeon decides that he would kill him. Surtur hurls another fireball at him, but Yeon blocks it. Surtur is now impressed and says only a few have been able to block his attack. So he tells Yeon to try blocking this too and flings his sword of flames. Seo Ah-hyun watches from a distance and thinks that she has to do something too. She calls Yeon and tells him she has an idea to beat Surtur. He runs to her while she guides him what direction to run so Surtur's attacks don't hit him. When they reach a safe place to talk, she tells him there's a water tank outside Neverland. If they could lure Surtur there, they could damage Surtur by using water to get rid of the flames. She says she would use her skills to predict Surtur's route and tell Yeon and then lure Surtur to the tank. Yeon stops in front of Surtur, who calls him a weak human and asks if he's tired of running. Yeon takes a jibe at him by saying that he's nothing compared to the Aesir gods, and says that in fact, Surtur's just a gate guard now. Yeon says he's in no position to call him weak. Surtur is speechless and Yeon asks again if he's afraid of a human too. This angers Surtur beyond belief. Yeon activates illusion skill and the water from the tanks put off the flames of Surtur. Yeon uses this opportunity to jump close to him and stab him with his sword. Surtur calls it a dirty trick. Yeon is unfazed and says he won anyway. Surtur then tells him that Yeon may have fought his copy, but going against his original self wouldn't be easy. He disappears after being defeated and the system informs Yeon that he's cleared the last mission. Seo Ah-hyun watches, feeling glad that it's over. The cat, still watching, says that they didn't need its help after all, and notes that Yeon is an interesting boy. It says that he looks anxious to become stronger and asks Hel if she thinks so too. Hel says that he's nothing more than a vessel. The cat then says that Hel is the one who's most curious about how Yeon's doing. The cat decides that the Aesir should not know about the existence of the great enemy yet. Even if the war is destined to happen, it's too early now. Odin is the highest being of the Aesir, whom the great enemy must kill, so he must become stronger. Yeon receives the reward he came here for, Jalfi's Thunder Steps. He is in awe of how amazing it is. An S-rank item is as powerful as it is rare. He notices Seo Ah-hyun with a strange look on her face. Realizing that she's trying to pull something again, he uses subordination. She immediately talks about the skill she received as a reward called Roskva's Seal. She mentions how it increases strength and gives courage. He thinks that rather than this, Cognition Accelerant would be more useful, but he'd wait for now as he could call her whenever he wanted. Then, Bruin shows up and wishes Yeon a safe journey while addressing him as the fated great enemy. Yeon is taken aback and asks him to wait, but Bruin takes his leave. Outside the dungeon, a huge crowd has gathered, and the moment they step out, there's chaos. A man comes forward to talk to Yeon, but he's gone. Everyone is astonished as Yeon was there a moment ago, so they rush to get an interview with Seo Ah-hyun. A man from the Raider Association asks another if Yeon hid himself, as it's possible if he's a martial arts class. The other man informs him that Yeon is actually magician class and tells him that he's a battle mage. Seung-yoon is on the phone with Sunye. After hanging up, she thinks that Yeon is not an ordinary kid because he vanished after accomplishing such a feat. She knows he wouldn't tell her anything unless she asks, so she decides to meet him sometime. After going back home, Yeon looks online and is glad to see that there's no articles about him. All the articles mention that an unknown person escaped from the theme dungeon. He knows that the Lotus Guild must have done something about it. When he exited the dungeon, he didn't expect so many people to be there, but at least he got to run out of there using Jalfi's Thunder Steps. Just by equipping them, his running speed gets 4 times faster, and he was able to get out of there without anyone noticing. Yeon wonders how fast they would be when he gets used to them. Yeon had also received a single-use item called Surtur's Flames. When used, it would reinforce a weapon to its strength capacity limit and imbue it with a flame attribute. With this incident, Yeon realized that he's still weak. He wants to be strong enough to win against any opponent without using dirty tricks, and strong enough to one-sidedly defeat the opponent. He wishes to be someone others don't dare to approach, out of fear. He wants to leave behind his weak past and protect his family and friends. He decides to become stronger no matter what, starting now. Yeon is talking to instructor Jeong Yasu and says that he would leave it all to her. She says she won't disappoint him and that she would report on every single detail about Yeon. Yeon thinks how one must get rid of weeds to have a beautiful garden. He's really excited about this event as he would be able to get rid of all the dirty things in his way. So that is it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. So if you like the video, then hit that like button and leave a comment for the next part. Most important, subscribe and press the bell icon for notification. I will meet you in the new video. Till then, bye.